Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to get into the town hall. There was a ton of things today covered in the September 6th town hall for Splinterlands. A ton. The whole thing was jam-packed with amazing new stuff, including new summoners and new promo cards and details on Rift Watchers and the Tower Defense game and Tower Defense packs and so much more. The whole thing is necessary almost. Like, go watch it. Just watch it. Don't just read the summary on, Hive or whatever. Don't just rely on my videos. There was a ton of things there. But while you're here, I want to do some speculation. They don't do this in that video, so I'm going to add to what you see there by looking at the Discord and watching the eye candy release of the summoners. So they've leaked the 6 epic summoners that we're going to get from Rift Watchers, and they showed the abilities, they showed the artwork. The artwork is amazing, and the abilities are interesting, and I want to talk about them, and I want to comment on what I think kind of where the most overpowered copies are and where maybe some of them are lackluster. Let's talk about that too. If that sounds interesting, stick around, stay tuned, like and subscribe. Guys, we made it to 6,500 on the channel. That's amazing. Thank you 6,500 and counting for subscribers. Still a ton of people out there that are watching but not subscribed. I encourage you to subscribe. When we get to 10K, I'm going to definitely do something crazy. I don't, we're a million miles away from there, but when we do, and I believe we will, there will be celebrations. So if you're already hanging out, make sure you're subscribed. And okay, let's get into it. So the Discord chat, first of all, look at this artwork. This is Rift Watcher artwork. Isn't this absolutely amazing? Like, this is a gigantic leap forward in terms of caliber and quality, and that's all I can say about that. It's a gigantic leap forward. Like, if you go look at old alphas, betas, even some of the more kind of like 1 or 2 year old, like even 1 year old cards from like Untamed, this is a huge leap forward. There's dimension to this artwork. There's foreground, background, there's movement, the color palette is more sophisticated. This is such a gigantic leap forward in artwork, and we're not going to focus on that today, but we are touching on it because we need to look at the 6 new summoners. This is not one of them, but this is one of the new pieces of one of the new cards they've shown us, or one of the I believe it's a card. And we've got Fernheart was the first one they showed us, and as you can see, he's the Earth Summoner, and you can see you're going to need 46 copies of him to max him out. That's an epic summoner, so you're going to need 46 copies to max him out, and he's got the +1 heart, and he's got the close range. And close range, of course, if you don't know, if you're new to the game, that enables your archery monsters to be able to fire in the first position, and that means archery monsters who usually have to be in the back lines away from the front of the war can fire even when they're at the front. And that's, of course, powerful. If we quickly look at, let's do it one by one. Right now we're looking at Fernheart, so let's go over to the green team. I want to look at the green team, and let's focus in on modern, because most of the people who are just getting started are looking at modern. So there's going to be some amazing synergies for each of these cards with the wild format. There will be, for sure. But let's focus in on the modern. And so when you're looking at Fernheart, you're going to be looking at Earth, and you're also going to be looking at neutral, because there are archery monsters on the neutral team. And we'll do this for each of the summoners. This will be a longer video, but I hope that I'm going to provide a lot of deep diving and sort of detailed analysis of what you might do with these monsters, and for that matter, which ones are going to be the more powerful and the more expensive of the 6. Okay, so close range is interesting. So I'm going to say first and foremost that I don't think there's a lot of value, or there's a lot of care that goes into the +1 heart. That's something they've done many times, and of course it's very, you're happy to have an extra heart. Who isn't? But it is not carry card. It's not a huge difference. It's often the case that when your monster dies, let's put it this way. It's rarely the case that when your monster dies, your opponent strikes him with exactly the right amount of damage. Do you know what I mean? So how often, just think about your last battle. When was the last time that every time a battle happened, you killed your enemy with the exact right amount of damage. Usually that's not the case. That's a lucky thing when it happens, and it's cool when it happens, but it's unlikely. It's usually the case that if you're going to kill a guy, you're going to hit him too hard anyways. You're going to hit him with 3 damage when you only need 2. You're going to hit him with 5 damage when you only need 1. And when that happens, it's like 1 heart didn't make a big difference in that context. And I'm not saying I wouldn't be happy to have a heart. I'm just saying there's a reason this got stuck with this. They believe that 1 heart is not a big deal. They also feel that close range is good but not great. And so they've given it two abilities in one. They don't necessarily synergize perfectly together, but in some sense they do. Here's the synergy I see. Often archery monsters are backline monsters, and that means that they have lower hit points, usually. Not always, but usually. So 1 more hit point makes them a bit more tanky. And then the idea that an archery monster might make it to the first position, it definitely needs a bit more hit points. So I see a synergy here, although I don't see that they're like, it's not the like a perfect unity of 2 abilities. It's an interesting synergy, and I really feel strongly that neither of them are deeply powerful, but each of them is helpful. And so Fernheart is interesting, but I want to look at some of the modern monsters and comment further on what we see there, and kind of begin to imagine how that synergy might work well or not well with the available modern teams. And so we really want to focus almost on the archery, right? Of course, 1 heart is going to help every monster on the screen. Mercenary is going to be benefited by 1. Morphoid is going to be benefited by 1 heart. Who cares, right? It's going to apply equally to every green monster. But the real cornerstone of whether this summoner will be powerful is going to come down to the fact that it either synergizes extremely well with the archery team of the Earth Splinter, or it doesn't. And so where are our monsters that are really at this moment awesome and everybody uses it, but that will be improved by the close range? Or where are the monsters that no one plays with, but now that it has close range or could have close range, that everyone will want? I'm not convinced I'm seeing anything. I mean, Vampiric Blossom is interesting. It depends with what level you're playing at. I like the Oppress. This is going to do a good amount of damage, especially if you're doing if you're fighting against like a cube. Holy cow, this thing deletes cubes with the Oppress and the Death Blow. And I like that if it gets to a situation where your first line, it is annoying when your last monster is an archery and he can't fire. It's super annoying, and you just slowly sit there until the rounds count up. And if you're going against a cube, for instance, what would happen? You would get to a place where round 20 does that, forget what it's called. I always say chip damage, but there's a different word for it. Anyways, you're going to start taking extra damage. Fatigue. You're going to take fatigue damage at round 20 and 21 and 22 and so on, until Vampiric Blossom dies in that situation. So close range is going to help a card like this. But does it dramatically change Vampiric Blossom and make it suddenly a must own? I don't really think so. For this price, I love it. But again, I don't know that this new synergy with this new Riftwatcher summoner dramatically changes anything there. Goblin Tower is a card I never really mess with. It's just too slow. Now I know reverse speed is a thing, and when that happens, cards like this can be really helpful. Plus, it is dropping bombs. Literally 5 blast is huge. And when you get that into the close range context, potentially, that could be pretty interesting. And you do have a pretty, I'm going to say, beefy tank when you have 5 hit points. 5 armor, 5 hit points, plus 1 hit point for 6. The 11 hit points for the Goblin Tower. But I don't know, man. It's just too slow. So we're talking pretty niche. Like I just described Vampiric Blossom and how that would be really cool if you were going up against Cube. But I mean, that was pretty well the truth yesterday, and now it's nothing. It's only gotten slightly better because of the new summoner. And then we look at Goblin Tower and we're like, yeah, that would be cool. But it's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's resilient. It has a good amount of hit points when you consider the armor, but they're not void armor. It doesn't have void, it doesn't have shield. If it was your only card, you definitely don't want this thing in the first position. Like, that's not going to go well for you. with the, even especially with the 1 speed, even in reverse speed though. And so does close range help a card like this? Sure it does, but does it feel game breaking? Not at all. Barking Spider, and very few people own this thing, so I mean I won't spend too much time here, but I like this card first of all, and second of all, I would say again, if you were gonna do the one of the things I'm gonna say now, which I imagine is gonna be my final ruling on this card, is that if you often have a lot of archery monsters that you play on your green team, which isn't usually what I see when I face green, but let's say you have 5 or 6 archery monsters, maybe you have some of the older ones like the, I think they're untamed in the dice. Like you're looking at Medica Headhunter or I forget the other ones, but they are kind of a bit older. I think they might be wild even. Yeah, I don't see them. Yep, they must be a bit older. But there's some really amazing archery units. If my point is, if you have 5 or 6 archery units and you often play 1 main tank and let's say 4 or 5 archery units behind it, a card like Fernheart is going to be a real benefit to you because it's going to turn those archery monsters. It's going to give you that freedom of knowing if your primary tank goes down, the archeries in the 2nd and 3rd position are going to keep on firing. That's huge. But I don't see that any one of these is going to be deeply impacted or positively, dramatically, improved by a partnership with Ferndale. Yes, 1 more heart's great. Yes, close range is fine. I would even see it's good. But I don't think it's a game changer for Modern. Maybe if you start to take into consideration some of the wild monsters, and I don't want to spend too much time on wild because, like I said, we want to focus in on some of the more modern viewership. But oh man, a card like Spirit Hunter or Spirit of the Forest, which has huge hit points, has great speed, flight, and tank heal, which could be its healing itself. That could be really huge. Swamp Thing's so cheap. Elemental Earth so cheap mana wise. Both really big hit point pools at the higher levels. There's one, Javelin Thrower. So if you're like a Javelin Thrower, Medica Headhunter, Earth Elemental, Swamp Thing, I could definitely see this being a card you're going to be interested in, but those are wild, not modern. And so I feel like it's just okay. And now, does that mean it's going to be inexpensive? Maybe. I'm kind of leaning towards thinking this summoner will be more inexpensive than maybe some of the other green ones. Would this, in your mind, be more or less valuable than Obsidian? That's one of the questions I'm asking myself. And you want to begin to think that through for yourself and form your own opinions about where you think it rests in the pecking order of the Earth summoners, because that should, if you can, formulate a strong fundamental argument, like based on facts and considerations, based on monsters that are available and, synergies that exist, and you can say distinctly and definitively, well, I really think Fernheart's probably worse than Obsidian. Worse in most contexts than Obsidian, then that probably means your price tag is going to come in lower than Obsidian. And maybe that makes it desirable to you because it's more potentially affordable. You do have to weigh that against the fact that this card will be more rare than Obsidian. But I kind of think this card isn't as strong as Obsidian. I kind of think it's just interesting. It's not deeply impactful. That's my kind of that's what I'll say about Fernheart. Now let's move on. After Fernheart, we saw right at the end of the town hall, by the way. So in the middle of the town hall, even at the beginning of the town hall, Matt dropped Dallin, who you see in front of you now, and Fernheart, who we just looked at. And I thought, oh, holy mow, they showed 2 of the epic summoners. That's amazing. And I thought that'd be it for sure. But right at the literal last minute of the town hall, Matt just drops the rest of them. Boom, 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 boom. Which is, this town hall, guys, was ridiculous. It was so chocked full of important stuff. But let's keep going. Dallin, Death Summoner. Epic Death Summoner with Cripple. Now, one important thing you might have missed if you didn't watch the entire town hall is that they said Cripple has currently been bugged and has been since its inception. One thing about Cripple is that they've made it's playable. The way it enacts within the gameplay is that it can be cleansed. If you cripple a monster and then you have a cleanser behind, you can wipe away the cripple. Matt specifically and definitively stated that is a bug and it will be fixed. So you're not supposed to be able to cleanse cripple. He likened it to the fact that when you break someone's bone, you don't just cleanse that off like you know, like a cough or a cold. It's like a broken bone, and you're infirmed and you're damaged and you're crippled, quote unquote crippled, for the remainder of that battle. And so every cripple that compiles onto a monster is going to just add up and add up and add up. I think this is going to be very powerful in some situations. This is going to be a nice thing to see. This is going to be an amazing buff for your team when you go up against, for instance, life and the more often occurring taunt from that Silver Shield Paladin, I think he's called. No, the Shield Bearer. The Shield Bearer is what his name is. If you're used to seeing that taunt on the Shield Bearer with huge shields, and then they throw protect and they bring out the Resurrects. Dallin is gonna help you cripple that thing, because one, the taunt is gonna attract all of your attackers as the death team. All of them are gonna be focus firing the Shield Bearer, and then the cripple is gonna really be chipping away at what his heal can be restored to, and it's not then returnable through cleanse. Period. Full stop. Which is amazing, because that's gonna then bring it down to a place where maybe you can manage it. It's gonna help that sort of. That's gonna be one response for that reoccurring taunt play that. And we see it with Kraken on the blue team also. Kraken is a taunt monster in the first position. And a lot of times he gets supported really well with cleanse and tank heal and armor from the back lines of the water splinter. This is going to help in those contexts, maybe even more so with Kraken than it will with the other one, because Kraken won't have void armor. And therefore, when you bring him down to one hit point or a few hit points, you should be able to kill him quite a bit easier with some magic, with a bit of magic damage. But Kraken has such a gigantic hit point pool. I think this is in part a response to taunt. I think that's one of the ways that you can play it. And if you imagine the utility in that context, you get to begin to understand its usefulness. Of course, cripple is helpful at any time, but if you're dropping a little cripple here and a little cripple there, I don't know that that's going to be deeply impactful. I think this will really take root and be most effective when it's focus fired. So either that's focus fired because your opponent unsuspectingly used taunt when you were using Dallin. That would go your way, I think. But also you could intentionally pick Dallin and build a team that would focus fire, right? Oh, well, you could pick 2 tanks, first and second position, and they are going to focus fire the front. And then you could do 4 sneak attack monsters, or you could do 2 tanks in the first and second position. You could do 4 magic or archery monsters. So in both those examples or suggestions, what you would be doing is doing your best to instruct your own team, building it in such a way that it is going to focus fire your opponent, and then let the cripple do its thing that way. I also think cripple is going to be really effective against the mycelic slip spawn, which again is another taunter with that big hit point pool, and is so often double or triple triage repaired by the earth splinter. So what we'll see is like a Grund in the first position doing double strike attacks in the first position, and you'll have like 1 or 2 or 3 triage monsters, and then you'll have a mycelic slip spawn that's there to cause that taunt distraction. That huge hit point pool of a slip spawn allows it to stay alive with the combination of 2 or 3 triages. But this cripple is going to stop that, because it's going to, every single impact is going to bring it down, the maximum hit point down, and that's going to lower the possible maximum heal also. So Dallin is interesting, but as is so often the case with the Death Splinter, the death is like a nerf. It's a reduction of your opponent, and not necessarily an empowerment of your own team. Yes, cripple makes your own team, I guess, do more damage, but in effect, cripple's biggest benefit is that it's going to nerf your abilities, your opponent's ability to sustain themselves, to heal themselves, and to keep their big tanks alive longer. And so I don't like this as much. Of the two so far, Fernheart or Dallin, I guess I like cripple because I play in the wild, and I know about, for instance, there's some double strike and stuff that you could imagine getting put into work. From the wild perspective, I have the Undead Minotaur. He's got the double strike, and if you want to make maximum effect of cripple, you want to land as many blows as possible. So Undead Minotaur, Hobgoblin, these are old cards that are like relatively inexpensive actually. And if you ever play in the wild format, these are cards that especially the Minotaur, that I would strongly, tell you to consider getting. This is a card that is definitely worth, look at that, it's $3. Where you get for 17 BCX, you're up there at level 4, which is playable in silver. And you're going to get 2 damage times double strike. And this is like a card for $3 in your back pocket that you're going to be able to play in tournaments, or you're going to be able to play in the wild format. And it's going to give you that. You're not going to use it as a main tank. You're going to use it as like a third, fourth, fifth position in those rule sets where melee attacks from any position. And remember, there are 3 different rule sets that do that. So that's not uncommon. And so I think this is an ace up your sleeve, especially if you're going to use a Dallin, for instance. And then Hobgoblin, a bit more expensive, but it's got that, because it's got that neutral splinter, and therefore more applicable. So you're quite a bit more money, but you, again, for 2 damage, double strike, you can buy it for $10. Very reasonable. Like I have them, I think, maxed out, and I think they're really actually quite strong. I really do. But again, that's a wild consideration and not so much for the modern. From the modern standpoint, there is no double strike. But if this is one of those things I want to tell you about right now, if there gets to be, you might see in Rift Watchers or in a new reward card, a double strike neutral monster or a double strike death monster. And if you do, you want to remember this moment and think, okay, Dallin, he's got the cripple, and a double strike works so well with cripple. We know this in actual practice too, because remember, Water has an archery monster, what's his name, who has both double strike and cripple, and it's very, very effective. So this is something you're going to want to think about, and just keep it in the back of your mind. Like, one, you might want to buy one of these cards I just showed you, those 2 double strikers, or you might expect that they would drop a new double strike because of the possible synergy. I think that might be so. And so just be attentive to that and be one of the first people to recognize that, and therefore the first ones to take advantage of probably lower costs. Because as these things get recognized and as they sort of start to thrive and allow you to win more, that's when the prices are going to take off. And so you can be the first, and early adopters are going to get discounts on their purchases, I would argue. That's what I've always seen. So, that'd be what I would expect. So we'll stay back on modern. And from a cripple's perspective, I mean, again, I guess a double strike is one of the main possible considerations that I would look to. Blast is probably interesting. I think blast damage cripples both the primary target and the secondary target. I don't know for sure. If it does, and someone in the audience will know, if it does attack both first and second or even tertiary targets and cripple all of them, I don't know that it does actually. I'm starting to think it doesn't from my own memory. But if it does, that's something to take note of. And new blast monsters that come from the death team are going to be ones that might partner well. So actually, if anybody knows the answer to that, drop the comment below. Does blast damage improve cripple? Love to know that. Other than that, no. I mean, I feel like those are the big considerations. Those are all the big, I don't feel like any one monster that exists other than those 2 I already mentioned are going to benefit substantively from that new ability. And therefore, I don't feel like Dallin is deeply powerful, but he may well be less expensive than the summoners that exist. And if so, it might be a moment for you to get into your Death Splinter and get going. Like Thaddeus Brute is relatively inexpensive. What if this one comes out and it's $150 or $125? Maybe you get essentially a functional summoner with some unique abilities because of its epic status. Remember, epics get the bonus of a gold league. You have higher rare card output than other summoners do. We've covered that on the channel before. So that's an interesting benefit that will apply to all of these new summoners. But I'm kind of the opinion Dallin is underwhelming, even though the art's amazing, by the way. I didn't say that, but it is. There's like blade hand. He's got some sort of like magic conjuring here. He's got the skull, or it looks like he's got like spirits like bound to a belt or something. It looks like there's like some kind of suffering spirits. Looks like he's got a white beard and black eyes, and he's got this crazy cloak. He looks like a necromancer / pirate, like futuristic necromancer pirate. That's what I'm seeing. So Dallin looks cool. I don't know that he's going to be effective, but if you can get some double strike, that's something. Now, Aquatus. Aquatus has amazing artwork. He looks like, to me, this looks like mainstream Marvel artwork. Like, I feel like this is comic ready. I feel like this is the good guy meeting he looks kind of like Deadpool-y in the smile, and he looks like he's ready to like crack a joke and kill a guy. And so I'm saying he looks amazing, and I like Backfire. I don't know. I haven't fully thought this through yet. I've got some thoughts on these things, by the way, guys. Like, I didn't come to this totally cold, but I don't have like deep notes in front of me that I'm going off of. And so I may well, my opinion on these things may evolve. But as I think about Backfire for the first time significantly, I'm going to say I like Backfire. But the problem to me with Backfire is that it depends upon your intrinsic speed. Like, one of the things about Backfire is that you need to be fast, otherwise you're not going to be missed. And if you're not missed, the Backfire won't happen. And so if this is your summoner and you want to be like, you want to do a lot of the Backfire damage, then what you will need to bring to the table is fast, phase, like swiftness, slow, fast monsters, phase, that are going to hopefully give you an increased chance of dodging. Yeah, dodge, flight. And then because of those increased chances of dodging, you're going to trigger your Backfire. And I like this a lot, actually. I think this could be really nasty depending on the blue team that you hold. And so this is one of those summoners where if this was going to be the summoner you were going to buy, and I do think it's stronger than the first two we already talked about. If you're going to get this one, then that would mean to me the conversation would be like, okay, but what monsters do you have that will synergize with that ability? And if the answer is, well, I don't really have anything, like all my monsters are slow, or for that matter, not very, powerful or whatever, well, then that summoner, he better be really cheap. That would be the only lingering reason for you to go that way, unless you already have a ton of speed. And so I think, if you've got, like, for instance, Almo Cambio, that could be really interesting. Let's go regular before we go legendary. You've got Almo Cambio with 4 speed out the gate. That's interesting. But 6 speed at the higher levels. And he's got a phase. And, you throw a Backfire on there. That's pretty nasty, actually. You'd want to bring some... But the thing is, you're definitely going to want more swiftness and slow. Like either swiftness on your team or slow on their team. So, Bakjir's got slow. That could be interesting, but he's not going to dodge anything. So I don't know that he would fit. And he's 6 mana, and I just don't know how you would... Like, these two don't synergize well. And what you want is like a team that deeply synergizes well. Oceanus is fast, but he already has... Well, maybe Oceanus. Maybe Oceanus, hey? Because... Got the phase, got the 5 speed, got the force field, and this is one more thing. Backfire. Wow. Yeah, this feels like Oceanus gets a buff right now. I'm going to say that right out the gate here. Of course, Phantom gets a buff too because he's super evasive, and that's going to give you Backfire opportunities. But I actually like... I really like Oceanus especially for the price point and given that new partnership that will come. And then, yeah, Almo. And then let's look at the epics. See, it's not really going to... Backfire's not going to help your Wave Brood because he's too slow to dodge. Not going to help your Trujillo. Not going to help any of these other guys, really. Axemaster's that double striker I was talking about earlier, but this card has double strike and cripple, and that's why we know that Dallin will work well with double strike. So I don't feel like any of these really gets a huge buff because none of them are super fast. None of them have phase. None of them have dodge or swiftness or slow. Captain's Ghost? No. Serpent of Eld gets a buff, I would say, but this is contextual because one, you have to, this is an expensive card now, but two, you are still susceptible to magic. It doesn't have phase. What else? That's about it from the rares. What about the commons? You got a blind on your flying squid. That's nice. So flying squid, in my opinion, is a great partner with this new summoner, Aquatus, and also of course Oceanus. And those are the two big picks. Of course, Chaos Agent and Chaos Agent also, and also Alamo Cambio. So those are the picks I feel benefit from this new partnership, and I like this summoner a lot more than I like the first two. I do believe this is going to be strong. I think it's going to help your blue team, but the problem is if you don't have those cards I just cited, or some of the new ones that come out with phase, with dodge, with flying, with swiftness or slow, then you don't have the speed to take advantage of this new backfire summoner, and therefore that summoner will suffer. If you equip your summoner with those abilities I just mentioned, or these monsters I just cited, then I think you'll see success, but without them you won't. Okay, and then Skagor. Enrage is one of the more powerful ones, I would argue. Enrage, first of all, this is artwork we've seen a while ago, and this is why I think we can expect this monster up here to be a card in the game, because we saw Skagor. Where is she? Before we knew her name, we saw her artwork revealed right here, and so we knew she was coming into the game. We didn't know how or what. We now see that she's one of the summoners, and she gives her fire team Enrage. I think Enrage is a very powerful and hard to, this is potentially overpowered. It's really hard to understand all of the possible synergies that this could create, because it depends on the other rule sets available that dramatically change the effectiveness of this from the monsters on your team. What do I mean? If you have an amazing monster such as from the modern perspective, Exploding Rats, which is a common monster and super inexpensive. Where is he? Where's it rare? Exploding. What's going on? There. Oh, it is rare. Okay. So Exploding Rats. Okay. Please give me some privacy. Thank you. Close the door. Thank you. So if you have Exploding Rats and you slap Enrage on this thing and it's doing 4 damage with 7 speed, True Strike, Blast, Redemption, and you add to that Equalizer rule set, which gives this thing the same number of hearts as every other monster on the battlefield, this thing is so much more powerful than without Enrage. So much more. You're going to get 11 speed, I think, maybe 12, I forget, something like that, which is broken. Like you won't hit this thing, period. And then it's going to have, well, you'll have to hit it with magic because it doesn't have phase, but it'll have crazy speed, and it'll be doing, I think, 7 damage if you have no Inspires. And you could bring Inspire, by the way. So you bring your Inspire with your Enrage, and this thing's going to drop absolute bombs that are blast. And that's Exploding Rats. That's from the modern, but remember, we have the wild version, which is a common, which is the Exploding Dwarf. And I would argue this thing's even more powerful. In wild, this card just got even more valuable. $167 for this card. I think that's a steal. For this card, with this rule set, and with that new summoner that has Enrage in the context, I like this card already a ton for the Equalizer rule set. This is one of my favorite cards for the Equalizer rule set. But it got so much better by the way of this Skagor, which will slap Enrage on this thing. It could drop, I think, easily you're doing 12 damage with Blast on it, guys. And Retaliate and Trample and Piercing. This thing is so friggin' built for Skagor. But only really in the context of that rule set. So is that too niche? Well, I'll tell you now, this card wins a lot outside of that rule set, but in that rule set, I feel like this is the ace up the sleeve that wins, just wins on True Strike or on Equalizer if you have Skagor because of the Enrage rule set, or sorry, because of that Enrage ability. But that's a wild consideration from the modern stance. Like I said, I like that Rats. From the commons, anything with Retaliate. That's going to be what I'd say. Charlock Minotaur, Disintegrator. I don't love either of these cards, but now that they have Enrage, they're going to become far more powerful. Their speed is going to get significantly better because of the Enrage. Their damage output is going to get significantly better. The Retaliate is going to allow them to proc damage output that much more commonly. Disintegrator, same deal. Retaliate at the highest levels. Trample if it gets a kill. These two cards might have just, they needed a buff, I would say, and they might have just got one. And so that's consideration for you. That's the common side of things. Phineas Rage with Retaliate. So yeah, I'm definitely, and this is one that I think super, again, absolutely huge benefit to this card from Enrage, because the damage output is significant enough that when it gets 50% buff due to Enrage, that's huge. Plus the Retaliate, plus the Oppress, plus the Reach damage. It's so good. Such a good card anyways, and now I think it's better. I don't think Skagor is, her only benefit is going to extend to those who have Retaliate, but each of these cards you're seeing with Retaliate got way better right now, way better. Forgotten One, already an amazing card, way better, because look at Silver, you can rock this guy with the Retaliate, and you're doing 4 damage plus 2 speed. Its biggest weakness just got way better because the Enrage is going to trigger faster speed. And it's got a good enough hit point pool that it's going to survive. And this thing's going to be a wrecking ball. And I think a gold or better with the piercing, it's so good. And legendaries, no legendaries with Retaliate. But again, I don't think that's not the sole benefit. I'm going to say cards like Grum who have the Bloodlust. Well, I mean, it's the only one that has Bloodlust right now, I think. How could that not benefit, right? I'm going to say, how could that? Certainly, Enrage is going to help this thing. And one of the things about Enrage, anything with the big hit point pool too. So big hit point pools, melee damage, because Enrage most positively impacts physical damage, not your archery monster, not your magic. Why? Because those ones don't get a damage output. Enrage only damage increases melee monsters. And so I would say Grum is a benefactor for this new summoner. Magnor, but Magnor already had Enrage. That's the thing. So not a big deal for Magnor unless you were using a level 1 Magnor, which I don't think many people were. Nobody's got Chain Golem, right? But those who do are happy to see Enrage on this thing. How could you not be? So your tanks, your melee tanks definitely love Enrage. Wow. Legionnaire with Enrage doing 5 damage, which gets Giant Killer doubled and Death Blow doubled again. Wow. In certain contexts, right? Like this Legionnaire loves the new Enrage. I would say Elmo Cambio benefits also because even though Elmo doesn't do any damage output, one of the things about this card is that it is evasive. Once it gets hit once, its speed will go 50% higher, and then it's going to be so much harder to hit, and that would be a nice partnership to think about. And so anybody with phase with a huge speed starting point could be a real benefit and benefactor of Skagor. So you can see I've listed tons of cards that would partner well with Skagor, and that's just in the modern. I touched on the Exploding Dwarf, but I promise you there's way more benefactors in the wild. If we wanted to unpack that, we could, but that'd be a separate video almost. There's way more monsters that are going to love this new summoner than with the other ones, the other summoners already mentioned. That's, to me, indicative of the fact that this new summoner is more impactful with the kit and the monsters that exist. And so I feel strongly Skagor, of those that mentioned so far, is the best mentioned so far. Anything else I could think about? High hit point pools, melee first. your first and secondary tanks, retaliates, phase monsters. All of the above are going to benefit dramatically. What's the phase situation on the fire team? Ifrit Elder has got the phase, and therefore is going to benefit when it gets, again, when it takes damage, and it's going to get that speed buff. And so this could be a really interesting solo play. Ifrit Elder with your Skagor summoner. That's going to cost you 10 mana, which is playable in literally every game. And then what would happen? You're gonna proc your last stand. If you're in Diamond, you're gonna be dropping 5 magic, because Diamond or Champion, you're gonna be dropping 5 magic because 3 turns to 5. No, my bad. Magic damage will not increase, but you're gonna be dropping 3 magic damage. And then what will happen? You're gonna have, I think, 15 hit points because you're in last stand mode, and your speed's gonna go from 4 to, I think, 7, maybe 6. I think it's 6. So some decent chances to get to dodge due to your phase, and a good amount of damage output and a good hit point pool. It's not necessarily going to win every situation. It's not like that as powerful as, for instance, Llama Kron or something like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, Ifrit Elder is way cheaper than Kron, and Skagor is going to be way cheaper than Llama. And so it might be a poor man's Llama Kron. So, and of course, like I said earlier, Chaos Agent is going to benefit from that, from the backfire on the water summoner, the Aquatus. He's also going to benefit from the Skagor fire team. So these cards, yeah, I think Skagor is a very powerful, ability summoner. This is going to be one that we're all going to want. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's my favorites of the 4 mentioned so far. We got 2 more. We'll do life and then we'll do dragon. I'm going to say this is called Ilthain. +1 speed and archery reflect, which is not called archery reflect. It's called what? I forget what it's called. Called return fire. So return fire and +1 speed. Before we go there, this artwork is amazing. I'm thinking Dune. You know what I mean? It looks like one of the Bene Gesserit witches or something. But there's like a League of Legends vibe with this weapon, and I'm gonna say, almost like I'm also feeling like she's got like a there's like a Star Wars style to it almost. Do you know what I mean? Like you just feel like she's deeply powerful, and she could kick your ass with martial arts and command, right? So speed, I love it. That's the first thing out of the gate. Every time you get a +1 speed, we've seen how powerful Kellia Frendel is. And +1 speed is a lot. +1 speed impacts your ability to invoke damage, your ability to evade damage. It is gigantically important. Speed is everything. And whether or not and abilities that enhance speed are everything. So speed at the core of this game is so deeply entrenched. +1 speed is not one of the faster summoners, but of course it's nice to have a +1 option for the white team. White Life Splinter doesn't have a lot of fast monsters, at least not in the modern, and therefore +1 speed is definitely gonna, aid that deficit, let's say. And then archery reflect, or I think that's what it's called. Anyways, is nice. I don't love this ability, but as we said earlier with the +1 heart close range earth summoner, this ability is obviously not strong enough to stand alone. And this ability is, not strong enough to stand alone. This ability alone would equate to, Pyre, an old fire summoner. Not a bad thing, but I'm saying it's not in and of itself gonna make this summoner a carry summoner. But these two working together make it certainly powerful. I like this more than I like at least the Earth and Death Summoner, I think. This is somewhere in the middle of the pack is what I'm getting at so far. No, it's definitely, I don't think it's as good as Skagor, but let's stay open-minded and look at it. Look at the white team a bit. I don't know about this one, and this is where I see the weakness. Honestly, how can you not like speed? But I just feel like this is so whatever. Let's look at some of the life team monsters. Okay, so strikes me that it strikes me that some of the biggest benefactors of that archery reflect ability on a summoner would be your tanks. But here's the thing, most of the tanks already have, let's see. I gotta find it. I gotta find it again. Hang on, bear with me. Shield Bearer. For instance, Shield Bearer would benefit from that, but here's the deal. It already has it at level 8. So if you're playing the game at Diamond or Gold or Champ, you've already got the Return Fire. Now, it is kind of cool that if you're playing at Gold or Silver, you're going to be able to do what I already do with your Taunt and your Archery Reflect, your Return Fire, I mean to say. So maybe that's a low level buff and maybe a higher level, who cares? Just at least with him. But I see that as one of the ways that you're going to like using that with the higher level, with some of the tanks with the big hit points. It'd be nice, I guess, to have it on Hero of Beyond, because he go in the Last Stand mode. So he has close range, he has Last Stand, he has shield, he turns into a tank, and he goes quite beast mode. So it would be nice to have archery, that reflection on him. But I feel like I'm stretching to give you good examples of how you could use that well. Of course, yeah, Legionnaire. It's never gonna. You're certainly gonna like to see it on him for sure. Probably, yeah. You know, Uriel. You're gonna like to see it, big hit point base and the big armor. Cornelius already has it. Kralis. Most of you guys won't have Kralis, but I'm going to say this would be one that you would like to have it. So any of the big tanks, you're going to like to see that on there. But some of them already have it. Like Almo already has it. Cornelius already has it. Shield Bearer already has it in certain contexts. So, you know, yeah, you're going to like it. And I guess I haven't said, but it should go without saying that you're going to like to see that extra damage on your team, regardless of where it lands. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if you don't have one of the tanks I just showed you, this is going to be something that's occasionally going to kill your opponent, because they're going to hit you with archery damage, and you're going to chip damage them, and they're going to die. Is that going to happen often enough to merit this summoner being really powerful, or to push this summoner into kind of a place where it's recognized as deeply powerful? I don't think so. I think this ability is weak sauce. I think, of course, 1 speed is nice. I actually think, strangely, the +1 speed is more important than the archery damage. And that's different than the green summoner, who I would argue the close range is more important. Like, the ability is more important than the buff, than the trait buff. And so, yeah, trait buff more in this context, more important than the ability. So Ilthain, okay. And she's not gonna be bad, but I just don't see how this is gonna add a lot to what the white team is already doing, and therefore I don't see why this summoner is gonna be deeply needed for your life team. I'm gonna say you'd like to have it. The speed is almost the greater question, and I would say to you that Kelia has a high win rate in large part due to the +1 speed Kelia Frendel has on the blue team. And therefore, don't underestimate the +1 speed, but I think this is ripe for underestimation. I mean, not even underestimation. This is ripe for kind of slander. It's just like, it's not. I don't find it valuable. I don't find it deeply valuable. Of course, it's valuable. So I'm gonna say. So I think the order has to look something like probably. Dallin is probably on the lower end at this point, unless we start to see some more double strike. I'm gonna say Fernheart might be next. It might be a tie between Fernheart and Ilthain, and Aquatus is better than all of them, but he's going to depend on which card you have. If you have some of those fast monsters with the phase or the swiftness or slow, then he becomes quite enjoyable. If you don't, he won't. Skagor is head and shoulders above the rest. And lastly, I'm going to finish off with, I'm going to call Vispa. I think the S is probably silent, so it's probably Vispa. And she looks like a, well, she is a dragon. She looks like she's a half dragon. And I think in the lore of Splinterlands, they call them Nagas. And she's got some sort of like cool magic arrow fired off her bone bow. Super cool. And she's got like Medusa hair. I like it. Sick. It's really sick. And the phase right there, so good. This to me, almost, I haven't properly and fully thought this out yet. So I'm about to say my opinion, but I haven't. I've been, for the last 2 hours, I've been thinking about this. I'm like, Skagor or Vispa? Because here's the deal. Phase is so important, man. And so is Enrage. And it's really, really easy for Enrage to be overpowered. It's also really, really easy for Phase to be overpowered. These are huge summoners. These two are must-have, and the rest are interesting, with Aquatus being the best of the quote-unquote interesting, like the best of the mediocre, where Skagor and Vispa are head and shoulders above the rest. Enrage is so crazy and works so well, and that the fact that you can have Enrage rule set anytime you want is going to make your fire team just bananas. But Vispa is a dragon summoner, and Phase works so well with dragon if you have the right cards, again, kind of like Aquatus. But if you have the right cards, watch out. You won't be able to touch me. I like this. I think this might be broken. And let's just look at some of the dragon monsters and see what we can see about that. Begin to think it through and make a decision together. I think it might be broken. So the first thing is you want to look at monsters that are going to have high speed, right? You don't want to, like, it's not going to lend itself well to the desert dragon. It's just too slow. Kinjo, whatever. Void Dragon already has phase, so we're not going to kind of whatever, right? Here's the deal. Do any of these monsters have blind? I know they do, but let's check. Boom. If you've got one of these monsters on your team, you're going to detract your opponent's ability to hit you by 15%. Because the Gloridax Magus has blind at level 4. So if you're in Diamond or Champ, Chaos Dragon has blind at level 3, so if you're in gold. And Spirit Hoarder has blind at level 3, so if you're in gold. If you're fighting in gold or better, and you have one of these cards, you just need one of them. And you can't double blind, so just so you know. If you have one of these cards on your team, you're going to take away 15% of your opponent's ability to strike you. In conjunction with phase, that is going to be significant. And then when you add to that the fact that some of these monsters are really fast. So, oh man. We already looked at, oh yeah, and then we want to look at how many have slow, because these are just the legendaries. These are 3 monsters that you could play. Hang on, I got to go back. I got to look at, I was looking at just the legendaries. So slow, blind. Yeah, there's just the 3 of them for blind. And then for the slow, you could drop a Kinjo, you could drop a Diamond Dragon, you could drop a Scavo Hireling at various levels. When you get that slow kicking on your opponent in conjunction with phase on your team, good luck hitting me, right? How are they going to? If you've got a 5 or a 6 speed monster in the first position with maybe taunt, and that might be possible. I'd have to look at that. I'd want to look at all the taunt monsters next. But the amount of slows you've got here, there's 3 here, and why isn't this is just in the modern too, guys? Remember in wild we get 3 other ones. And so you could potentially have a team of slow if you're playing in wild, because you can do all 3 of these and you can do these in wild. So slow, there's tons of it. Swiftness, there's 2 of those at the higher level. Swift Naga Assassin at the highest level. Supply Runner, that's silver. So you can start doing this at silver. You add your swiftnesses, you add some slows to your team. Hopefully you can pull out a blind somewhere. It looks like their blinds start at gold. But and you add that to a phase summoner, and that thing is going to just make your team unhittable. Plus, if you can put a taunt, pull a taunt in there. And there's other things too, like dodge. Dodge on the Chaos Agent is going to make you 25% more likely to be avoided. And he's got phase already though. And then you've got light, which is a 25% evasion. There's no flyers? Are you kidding me? On the dragon team, there's no flyers at all. I find that unlikely to believe in the modern. And then taunt. But here's the thing. All of the monsters I just showed you, all of the slows, all of the swiftness, all of the blinds, all of the positive synergies for this amazing new summoner there were a lot of them, weren't there? They are going to deeply make you super fast, and they're going to partner so well with this phase summoner that this might be broken. But here's the thing. I think with just those monsters I showed you now, in just the modern format, I think I've actually shown dramatically that this card will be powerful. This summoner will be powerful. But because this is dragon, you have to add to that all of the other splinters, right? Because you could pick dragon with fire, dragon with water, dragon with earth, dragon with life, dragon with death, and then you're still going to get neutrals out of the opportunity. So where are our swiftnesses now? Look at that many. Those are going to be some of your swiftness partners, and some of them are going to be a variety of league levels. What about the slows? Tons of slows. You're going to have as many slows and as many swiftnesses as you want. What about the blinds? These are your partners on this summoner. And as you can see, there's tons of them. And when you add these things together in a format that's one, financially affordable, and two, has a relatively low mana cap, and three, is already within the context of one of your splinters that you already like playing, that's where things get crazy. So this dragon is actually really, really powerful. And to close that conversation out, because it's dragon, you can call in these taunt monsters, guys. And tell me you wouldn't like to see Dark Huan with 3 speed, but then call it 8 speed due to the speed differential you can create with your different swiftnesses and your different slows you can trigger, and a blind you can add in there. It's probably a 90. You can conceivably every day make this thing a 90 to 95% dodge opportunity. Plus, remember, it's got flight, it's got flying, and therefore that's a 25% dodge increase. This thing might be unhittable. Now, it's not cheap, so maybe you don't have that one. What about any of these other ones? This one's relatively cheap. It's kind of slow, but I'm telling you, you can still manipulate the speed in the ways I just showed you with all those different monsters to make this, if not unhittable, definitely much harder to hit, using that taunt so much more effectively because of this evasiveness that can come together due to the phase opportunity with the summoner, with the dragon summoner. So holy cow. I like it best, of course, with your faster monsters that have flying. Magnor has Enrage, and therefore his speed would get quite wild too when he gets hit. And therefore, I think Magnor or Dark Huan are the two best taunters in this context. Or trying any of these three in a rule set where the game rule set had Enrage, then you're going to get more speed out of these guys, and that's going to then partner well with Vispa, because you get the Enrage damage, which is the speed buff, and then in conjunction with the phase is going to suddenly make you unhittable. So Vispa, to me, if you've got the right cards, and there are tons of them, and the fact that it's dragon too, it's not only deeply impactful, it's not only full of different cards that are capable of synergizing well with it, but it's also dragon, and therefore, even if it didn't have a deeply impactful ability, which it does, it totally 100% does, it would still be awesome because it's dragon, and therefore he unlocks 2 splinters for you. I just made a video the other day where I was using Kretch Televor, who has no ability at all. His only thing is that he's dragon and he's epic, and therefore at the gold league level, he unlocks higher rare monsters than other summoners will. at that league level. So epics are special summoners, guys. You can pay attention to these ones. Dragons are uniquely special. And this dragon, this is by far, in my opinion, the most powerful. But Skagor is amazing also. But if Skagor was dragon and this was fire, it would go to Skagor. Like, they're both so strong. It just, at the end of the day, comes down to the fact that this is a dragon and unlocks all abilities from all summoners, from all leagues. Not all summoners, but all monsters, abilities, and splinters. So holy cow, this was an amazing town hall. These summoners are amazing in so many ways. Even the ones I don't like Dallin. Well, I wouldn't say I don't like them. Dallin and Fernheart, or whatever his name was. It's not that I don't like them, but they aren't in the same league of these other ones I've been mentioning more later in the video. So I'd love to know what you guys think about the comments I dropped here, but also I want to see what you guys think about these abilities and these summoners. Which one are you saying is the most powerful? Do you think I got it right? Is Dragon and Fire the number 1, 2? And if not, which is? And guys, thanks so much for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.